September 5th, 1986. A day forever etched in history. A day that began like any other, filled with promise. But fate had other plans. Pan Am Flight 73 became a crucible of fear and courage. This is the story of that fateful day. A routine journey turned terrifying ordeal, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. Pan Am Flight 73, a Boeing 747 jumbo jet, stood gleaming on the tarmac at Mumbai's Sahar International Airport. Its blue and white livery, a symbol of American aviation prowess, reflected the clear morning sky. For the passengers, a mix of nationalities and backgrounds, the journey ahead held different meanings. Businessmen in sharp suits clutched briefcases, their minds already on upcoming deals. Families, their faces alight with anticipation, were embarking on long-awaited vacations. Young couples, their hands intertwined, whispered promises of adventures to come. The atmosphere inside the cabin was one of nervous excitement, the usual hum of anticipation that precedes any flight. Stewardesses in their crisp uniforms moved gracefully through the aisles, ensuring passengers were settled and comfortable. The air was thick with the scent of jet fuel and the faint murmur of conversations in various languages. As the plane taxied down the runway and soared into the sky, the sprawling cityscape of Mumbai shrunk below, replaced by a vast expanse of clouds. Little did anyone know that this seemingly ordinary flight would soon become a battleground in a conflict far removed from their own lives. Among the crew members was a young woman named Nirja Banat, the head purser. At just 22 years old, Nirja possessed a quiet confidence and a warm smile that instantly put passengers at ease. A former model, she had chosen a career in the skies, drawn by the allure of travel and the opportunity to connect with people from all walks of life. Nirja approached her duties with a dedication and professionalism that belied her young age, always going the extra mile to ensure the well-being of those entrusted to her care. Unbeknownst to her, her training and instincts would soon be put to the ultimate test. The first leg of the journey passed without incident. As Pan Am Flight 73 touched down at Jinnah International Airport in Karachi, Pakistan for a scheduled stopover, passengers stirred from their slumber, eager to stretch their legs and breathe in the warm air. Some disembarked to explore the transit lounge, while others remained on board, content to wait for the flight to resume its journey. The stopover was routine, a brief pause in the long transatlantic flight. But as the minutes ticked by, an undercurrent of unease began to ripple through the aircraft. The delay, initially attributed to a minor technical issue, stretched on longer than expected. Whispers of concern turned into murmurs of frustration as passengers glanced nervously at their watches. Outside, the midday sun beat down on the tarmac, casting long shadows across the runway. Inside, the air grew heavy with a sense of foreboding, a palpable tension that hung in the air like a shroud. Unbeknownst to the unsuspecting passengers and crew, danger lurked just beyond the aircraft's doors, poised to shatter the illusion of normalcy and plunge them into a nightmare. As the minutes turned to what seemed like an eternity, a group of 4 men, their faces hidden behind dark sunglasses and their movements betraying a practiced ease, blended in with the throng of passengers disembarking from a recently arrived flight. They were dressed in the nondescript uniforms of airport ground staff, their true identities concealed beneath a veneer of authority. But beneath their unremarkable facade beat the hearts of terrorists, their minds consumed by a deadly agenda. Armed with grenades and automatic weapons, they made their way towards Pan Am Flight 73, their mission to seize control of the aircraft and hold its passengers hostage. The midday sun cast long shadows across the tarmac, the air thick with the smell of jet fuel and the distant hum of aircraft engines. The hijackers, disguised as airport personnel, moved with calculated precision. They slipped past the unattended checkpoint, their movements swift and silent. Their disguise granted them access to the restricted area. Section 2. Panic in the aisles, terror takes hold. The tranquility of the aircraft cabin was shattered in an instant. Hijackers stormed through the entrance, weapons brandished. Shockwaves transformed the atmosphere to sheer terror. Screams pierced the air, mingling with hijackers' commands. Gunmen barked orders, their words laced with threats. Panic spread like wildfire, engulfing the passengers. Section 3. Trapped in Paradise. The standoff begins. As the initial shock subsided, a heavy silence descended upon the aircraft, broken only by the sobs of terrified passengers and the whispered prayers of those clinging to hope. Outside, the searing Pakistani sun beat down on the tarmac, baking the aircraft's metal skin and reflecting the harsh reality of their predicament. Pan Am Flight 73, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, was now a gilded cage, a steel and aluminum prison held hostage on the edge of paradise. News of the hijacking spread like wildfire, crackling across international airwaves and flashing urgently on television screens around the world. In newsrooms and government offices, a sense of urgency gripped those tasked with responding to the unfolding crisis. Diplomatic channels buzzed with frantic activity as governments scrambled to make contact with the hijackers and secure the safe release of the hostages. The eyes of the world were now fixed on Karachi, holding its breath as the drama unfolded. Inside the aircraft, time seemed to stand still. The hijackers, their initial frenzy subsiding, began to assert their authority, their voices taking on a chilling calmness that belied the chaos they had unleashed. They barked orders, herding passengers like cattle, separating some as potential bargaining chips, their criteria a chilling reminder of the arbitrary nature of their power. The hostages, their movements restricted, their spirits crushed, could only wait and pray, their fates hanging precariously in the balance. As the sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the tarmac, the full weight of their situation dawned on the passengers and crew of Pan Am Flight 73. They were trapped, their lives held hostage in a foreign land, their fate uncertain. The world outside, once so close and familiar, now seemed a million miles away, separated by a gulf of fear, violence, and the chilling realization that their lives would never be the same. Section 1. Demands and Defiance. A Battle of Wills. The air inside the stifling cabin crackled with tension, a palpable weight pressing down on the hostages. The hijackers, their initial adrenaline-fueled frenzy giving way to a calculated coldness, began to articulate their demands, their voices echoing through the silent aircraft with the sharp clarity of a death knell. Their ultimatum, a chilling mix of political rhetoric and violent threats, left no room for doubt. The lives of the passengers and crew were now bargaining chips in a deadly game of international intrigue. The hijackers' demands, relayed through the aircraft's radio to the control tower and broadcast across the world by a stunned media, sent shockwaves through the international community. Governments scrambled to assess the situation, their responses a delicate dance between diplomacy and the need to protect their citizens. The stakes were impossibly high, the lives of hundreds hanging precariously in the balance as negotiators raced against time to find a peaceful resolution. Inside the aircraft, the hostages listened with a mix of fear and defiance as the hijackers' demands were met with a wall of silence from the outside world. The silence, a deafening testament to their isolation, served as a stark reminder that they were trapped, their fates inextricably linked to the whims of their captors. Yet even in the face of such overwhelming adversity, a spark of defiance flickered within the hearts of some. As the hours dragged on, the atmosphere inside the aircraft grew increasingly oppressive. The stifling heat, exacerbated by the lack of ventilation, transformed the cabin into a furnace, the air thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and the faint but ever-present odor of jet fuel. The hostages, their movements restricted, their spirits ground down by the relentless pressure, clung to the hope that somehow, some way, they would escape this nightmare. As the sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the tarmac and painting the Karachi sky in hues of orange and purple, a glimmer of hope emerged from the darkness. Word spread through the aircraft, whispered from passenger to passenger, that negotiations were underway. Details were scarce, but the mere possibility of a peaceful resolution, however remote, was enough to rekindle a flicker of hope in the hearts of the hostages. The Pakistani government, under intense pressure from the international community, had initiated contact with the hijackers, their negotiators treading a delicate path between appeasing the terrorists' demands and ensuring the safety of the hostages. Every word, every gesture was fraught with significance, a misstep potentially carrying deadly consequences. The world watched and waited, holding its breath as the drama unfolded. Inside the aircraft, the atmosphere remained tense, but a subtle shift had occurred. The hijackers, their initial bravado tempered by the realization that they were now engaged in a high-stakes game of international diplomacy, seemed less volatile, their movements less erratic. The hostages, sensing a change in the air, clung to the hope that their ordeal might soon be over. Yet, even as negotiations continued, a sense of unease lingered in the air. The hijackers' demands remained unmet, their threats ever present. The hostages, their nerves frayed by the ordeal, understood that their freedom was far from guaranteed. The situation remained volatile, a powder keg waiting for a spark to ignite it. As the night wore on, the delicate dance between the negotiators and the hijackers continued. A tense back and forth played out against a backdrop of fear and uncertainty. The hijackers, their patience wearing thin, grew increasingly agitated, their threats escalating with each passing hour. The hostages, their initial hope giving way to despair, watched as the situation deteriorated, their fate hanging precariously in the balance. The situation, once a tense standoff, was teetering on the brink of chaos. In the midst of the escalating chaos, one woman refused to succumb to fear. Nirja Banot, the young head purser of Pan Am Flight 73, had spent the harrowing hours since the hijacking began tending to the needs of the passengers. With the lives of over 300 passengers and crew hanging in the balance, Nirja made a decision that would define her legacy as a hero. She would fight back, not with weapons or violence, but with the indomitable spirit of a woman determined to protect those entrusted to her care. Nirja, her heart pounding, moved through the aircraft's darkened aisles with the stealth of a phantom. The hijackers, their attention consumed by the stalled negotiations, remained oblivious to her movements. As the hijackers herded a group of passengers towards the front, Nirja slipped unnoticed into the galley. Surrounded by the mundane trappings of her job, Nirja's mind raced, piecing together a desperate plan. The galley became Nirja's sanctuary, a place where she could think clearly. She knew that American citizens were the primary targets. If she could conceal their identities, it might buy them precious time. Nirja instructed the other flight attendants to gather the American passports discreetly. As Nirja and her fellow flight attendants carried out their clandestine operation, a strange sense of unity settled over the darkened cabin. Passengers whispered words of encouragement, their shared fear forging an unlikely bond. Small acts of kindness took on profound significance, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The hijackers, their attention focused on the outside world, remained oblivious to the quiet acts of courage unfolding beneath their noses. As the hours ticked by, the hope that had sustained the passengers and crew began to dwindle. The negotiators' efforts were met with a wall of silence, a chilling indication that the situation was spiraling out of control. The hijackers, their patience exhausted, grew increasingly agitated, their movements erratic. Then, without warning, the aircraft plunged into darkness, screams piercing the night. The sudden darkness amplified every sound, every terrified gasp. Gunfire erupted, the deafening roar shattering the oppressive silence. Passengers scrambled for cover, their desperate cries swallowed by the cacophony. The hijackers fired indiscriminately, their bullets ripping through the aircraft's interior. Amidst the chaos, Nirja Banot found a strength within herself that belied her 22 years. She moved through the aircraft's darkened cabin, her steps purposeful, her voice a calming presence. With each life she touched, Nirja's resolve solidified. She became a beacon in the darkness, a symbol of defiance against the senseless violence. The emergency exit door, its metal frame twisted, seemed to mock Nirja with its promise of freedom. With a strength born of desperation, she threw her weight against the door. Finally, the door gave way, revealing the night sky beyond. Nirja urged the passengers forward, her voice hoarse but firm. As the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, Pan Am Flight 73 stood silent. Pakistani commandos swarmed the aircraft, their weapons at the ready. They moved through the aircraft's ravaged interior, securing the aircraft and tending to the wounded. Each rescued passenger was a small victory against the darkness that had descended upon them all. The aftermath of terror. The sun rose over a city reeling from the horrific night, casting shadows on the wreckage of Pan Am Flight 73. The aircraft, now twisted metal and shattered glass, stood as a reminder of life's fragility and terrorism's brutality. In hospitals, doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, their faces etched with fatigue and sorrow. The world watched as the names of the victims scrolled across screens, each name a story unfinished. The psychological scars, the invisible wounds, would linger, a constant reminder of the terror endured. The world mourned, united in grief and outrage. For the survivors and families, the world would never be the same. Honoring Nirja and the spirit of Pan Am 73. From the ashes of tragedy, stories of extraordinary courage and compassion emerged. Nirja Banat, the young flight attendant, became a symbol of selfless heroism. Her actions transcended boundaries, resonating deeply with people from all walks of life. She faced down evil with the indomitable spirit of a woman determined to protect. Nirja's story continued to inspire, her legacy kept alive through books and films. She became a symbol of hope, a reminder of the human spirit's triumph. Her story served as a beacon, illuminating the path toward a more compassionate world.